What's up, Cedar Mill Youth High Schoolers? We're so excited for today. If you're meeting with us in person, hello. Welcome to the church building outside. I hope today's a beautiful day. If you're meeting with us on YouTube, hello. We're excited that you've joined us. Today, we have kind of a one-off conversation on the topic of arguing, or what it means to have a very strong disagreement. And we all know what it's like to hold one point of view or understand something so strongly that it causes argument with another person. And we all know people in situations that just grind our gears, like there's topics or situations or whatever it is. There's a whole slew of things that kind of get underneath our skin. And most often it's with our siblings or the people that are closest with us. But if I'm being honest, arguments, disagreements, a lack of a heart of understanding is absolutely flooding our culture right now. It's the temperature of the world around us. It's not just with the people closest to us. It's actually everywhere we go, there's disagreement. And it's important that we, as followers of Jesus, we don't conform to the pattern of argument like the world does right now. You probably see on social media just clapbacks all the time. Like you have this belief and there's 15 people that say this to clap back at you. Like it's important that we think about what it looks like to disagree or argue well. And it might be different than what you think. So let's go ahead and dive into this. When it comes to arguing, we all have our go-to style. You have a style of arguing. Maybe your go-to move is to be louder than the other person. Like you raise your voice, like your decibels go up and you're like, no, this is what I believe. Whatever it is, you will simply talk at a louder decibel in order to drown out what other people are saying. Maybe you're like, yeah, that's not me, that's my sibling though. Maybe you subtly change the subject like mid-argument. You totally dodge the actual topic that you're arguing about. And then you feel like you've won. Because we're no longer talking about what we set out to talk about. Maybe you go to like being passive aggressive. Like you make a snide comment that appears to be harmless. Like you know exactly what you're saying, but you're trying to do something that cuts really, really deep. Maybe you're just plain aggressive. Like you just start flipping out and you just move to the next level and turn tables and then move on with your life. Maybe you just go silent. Maybe that's physically you just don't talk, or like you resort to just going into your room and hiding out. But everyone can read your face and they know exactly like you're tipped off, but you're not going to talk about it. Everyone has a way in which they fight or argue or disagree. In the same way, nearly everybody has something they want to fight for, like a subject that gets you ready to throw down. Like if we're going to open up this can of worms, I've got a lot of stuff to say. I have a lot of beliefs. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of emotion behind it. We all have something that we care so deeply about that we will put up a fight for it. And I think that's beautiful, but we need to understand how to argue well. And these arguments, they can be silly. I have a bunch of silly ones, but I have a bunch of very, very real ones. A silly one, for instance, Allison and I often have arguments over how to say the name of one of our favorite candy bars, Reese's. Reese's, is it Reese's or Reese's? I don't know. I argue one way or the other both times. I cannot figure out which one it is. Or we have loaded, maybe this is you have loaded thoughts or beliefs on sports teams, different sports teams. But it gets very real when it's like, yeah, no, this player is the best, or this musician is awesome. Like you don't know Kanye the way I do, man. You know what I mean? But it gets very real when it comes to bigger things like politics or women's rights or immigration or masks. Do you wear them? Do you don't? What? So you see, we all have subjects that we care about and triggering conversations that kind of make us want to scream or make us want to respond in some way. Everybody has an opinion, and sometimes those opinions can bring out a fight within us. The world around us is facing constant conflict. Like when the world around you is in constant conflict, most people tend to do one of three things. One, they go straight to anger. Like you pick your side and then you get angry and you act and do everything you can to make the other side not exist. So you fight and you try to change them or prove that your side is right. The second one is this: you feel impartial, or you feel neutral, or you feel torn, like you don't really know which side to take. or you're not sure whether you care a lot about the argument or not. And you see both sides, and with so many people angry about it, you wonder if you should be angry, but you just choose to opt out. And the third one is this: apathy or carelessness. Like, you're just here to watch the fight go down. Like, you're not going to say a word, but you are going to watch what happens. Like, you're happy to just not be involved in the drama at all. When we really get involved in an argument, we all want one thing, and that is to win, right? We want to win. That's our ultimate goal, for our side to be seen and valued, and for the other person to back down and walk away saying, yes, Nick, you are so right. That was a beautiful perspective. You're the man, right? We want to win. And we all have a few tactics that we've practiced to help us do that. Whether you win through yelling or silence or ghosting or showing up to the fight or talking to the person or talking about that person to everybody else to make them look ridiculous, we all have the same goal in mind: to win. We want to win. And this has never felt more important than it does right now. Whether it's in our homes, on social media, or in the culture that we see around us, like, we are surrounded by big questions with big arguments. Are you for or against nearly everything? Are you for this or are you against this? Everybody. With that in mind, in a time with unavoidable argument, what are we supposed to do as followers of Jesus? How can we get better at arguing? Or is that the right question? How do we truly win? We're going to look at a passage from the book of James, who was the brother of Jesus. And this is interesting because at some point growing up, I'm sure there was conflict between James and Jesus, just like any other sibling relationship. But listen to what James says here. He says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this." In other words, note takers are world changers. Take note of this. Write this down. I'm just kidding. I don't actually know if that is what that means. But here it is. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Doesn't that sound pretty countercultural to the way of the world right now? Do you see people quick to listen? Like, let me hear you out on that. Do you see people like slow to speak? Like, before I say anything, let me gather my thoughts. Or do you see people going, before I get angry, I'm going to take a step, right? It's totally not like the world right now. James probably spent most of his life doing what most of us do with our siblings, and that is being quick to speak and slow to listen. Like, I'm not going to listen to you, and here's what I think. And from what we read in the Gospels, James wasn't super supportive of what Jesus was doing. That's actually kind of a crazy thing. When your older brother starts walking around saying that he's God, you usually have some arguments against it. Maybe your older brother does do that. But I could even imagine that James was probably quick to tell other people that his brother was crazy. Like, dude, yeah, Jesus is walking around saying he's like the Son of God. What? Dude, no. I know who his dad is, you know what I mean? Or maybe he's quick to tell Jesus that there's no way he is who he claimed to be. Or maybe he was quick to point or take a stand or defend his position. Maybe he's quick to fight with Jesus. That is until James realized that he had been going about it wrong all along. By listening, most likely to Jesus' friends and followers before him, or even Jesus himself, James began to see something that he didn't see before. His brother wasn't acting like God. He was actually God in the flesh, God in a body. He was who he claimed to be. When Jesus changed his mind about Jesus and saw him for who he really was, it put everything else into perspective, including conflict. So James instructs us to listen first. Whether you're right or wrong, whether you know the story or you don't care about the whole story, whether you have a great clapback or a way to shred the other person, no matter the situation, the response should be the same: to listen before anything else. To listen, to hear somebody out, to hear things from another person's perspective. Listen first with the intent of learning instead of trying to change someone's mind. That's what's hard about arguing, is we often jump into the argument saying, I'm going to change this person's mind. What if we stepped into an argument saying, I'm going to listen to this person's perspective before I say anything? After we listen, James says that we should be slow to speak and slow to become angry. And this is important because it doesn't mean that we shouldn't speak at all. It doesn't mean that we should sit back and take whatever somebody throws at us, right? It means that we We don't speak reactively. We pause, we take a deep breath, and compose our thoughts and emotions before we speak. Why? Because we've all been in a place where we didn't pause and we said or we texted or we yelled or we posted something that we regret. Like, I have been in this place recently where I was angered or like stirred up about something and said things without taking a deep breath, pausing. And I would say just taking a deep breath, pause and think and get your emotions and thoughts together is like one of the most prophetic invitations for followers of Jesus right now. Slow to speak and slow to anger means that we don't let our emotions determine our reactions. Are your emotions determining your reactions right now? And when we do speak, we will do that purposefully and in a way that is honorable to the other person. We all know what it's like to be quick to speak and quick to become angry. Like, think about middle school. What were the things that you got super worked up about? Now think about this. Are those things important to you now? Like, do they even matter anymore? I'm guessing they don't. I bet those arguments would even seem silly right now if you thought back on them. But you know what is important still? The people that you were arguing with. Your siblings, your parents, your step-parents, your friends, they matter right now in this moment. And even if they aren't super involved in your life right now, they matter because they're people. In other words, the people we argue with will matter far longer than the thing we're arguing about. Let me say that again. The people that we're arguing with will matter far longer than the thing that we're arguing about. Here's what I'm getting at. You will never win an argument if you lose the relationship. You will never win an argument if you lose the relationship. What if we stepped into arguments understanding that in these times? We are right in the middle of a time when tensions are high, conflict is normal. In fact, conflict feels constant, like it doesn't stop. Arguments are playing out in our homes and in our friendships and in our schools and in our culture. And when conflict is everywhere, the temptation is to ask, how do I win and prove that I'm right? But maybe that's the wrong question to ask. Maybe instead of asking, how do I win, the question is, how do I win in this relationship? And I think that looks different from case to case, from person to person. How can I talk about this specific thing in a way that if we don't agree and if we never are convinced who is right, then we can still be friends, we can still be in relationship? Even if I'm not good with their opinion, like I don't see eye to eye with them, is there a way that we can be good? Not always, but if there is, that is a win. And that slight change in the question makes all the difference in the world, because it's no longer about making the person realize that you're wrong. It's about making the other person realize that their relationship with you matters more than the thing that you're arguing about. So there you go. All your arguments are fixed. What more do you want? No, I'm just kidding. It's not easy. It's not easy. I know that like real talk, figuring out how to handle arguments or conflict or disagreements has been one of the hardest things as we mature into the people that Christ is calling us into. And I'm sure it's been difficult for you too. It's not easy. But here's a few steps that I've discovered that will make it a little bit more possible. And I've had to exercise these in the last couple weeks a lot because I don't always exercise what James has invited us into. So this first step that I'm challenging you and myself to do as we jump into conversations and arguments and disagreements is this. Memorize this verse. Put this to memory. If we want to respond to arguments and conflict differently, we need a new technique. Just like listening to a song, when we memorize scripture, it gets into our head and it starts making us think differently. Put this to memory. James 1, verse 1. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. When you're in an argument that's getting heated and you're just like, oh, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to listen. I'm going to be slow to speak. I'm going to stop before I get too angry. Second thing is this, pause and pray. Nothing helps us to be slow to speak like stopping for a moment to pray for the other person. When you pray for somebody, it changes how we think about them. Like our brain naturally puts people in categories, but when we pray for them, it forces us to see them as more than just one trait or one argument. It helps us to remember that they are a human who probably wants the same things that we do. Which brings me to the last thing, empathize. Empathize with the person. Empathy is what happens when we put ourselves in other people's shoes. Whoever you disagree with usually has more to their story than you know. There's more to their opinion or beliefs, but it's hard to remember that if we don't pause and listen to their story before responding. Try challenging yourself to not respond until you've thought about it long enough that you can clearly state how they feel in a way that is loving. Usually, if you talk about the issue from their point of view, you can empathize even if you still disagree. Like, man, I totally see your point, or I absolutely understand where you're coming from. Like, wow, that's a really, really hard place to be. I see why you hold that perspective. We may not be able to change the way people behave when it comes to conflict or arguing or fighting, but we can change how we behave in those situations. Of course, that's easier said than done. Like tomorrow, that person might post a thing on social media that drives you crazy, or when your parents don't allow you to go out with friends, or when a friend brings up a huge topic without being educated on the matter, you're going to want to pull your hair out, but you have to slow down for a moment. And that's one of the reasons why I think small groups are so important. It's a place for you to talk about real things with real people who have real ideas about real life stuff. And it's a group of people that can encourage you and challenge you to do the right thing, even when you aren't feeling it. So as you head out, I want you to think of this. Think of one relationship that would be better if you practice this verse. What is one relationship or one platform where you tend to argue often, or you tend to just be in this area of conflict where you have a very strong perspective? How could that relationship be better if you practice this verse? Then challenge yourself to just do that, to be quick to listen, to be slow to speak, and slow to become angry with fill in the blank, that person, that platform, wherever it is that you tend to have strong disagreements. And that's how you win every time. When you win not a relationship, or not an argument, but a relationship, you win every time. We love you guys. Enjoy your small groups. We'll see you soon.